Asked what was the first and the greatest of commandments, Jesus said unto them, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. This is the first and the great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commands hang all the law and the prophets. It would be a lesson that Cain would fail to learn even amidst his own life. Cain's heart wasn't filled with love. It wasn't guided by love, either for his God or for his fellow man. Yes, he offered sacrifices to the Lord, but he did so because it was what he was told to do. It was what he was taught to do. It was what he was told was the right thing to do for his life. Yet he never thought out the more significant meaning. He never sought out to understand what was truly behind it all. The first sin offering, it was given as Adam and Eve were expelled from Eden, as God took the hides of animals to fashion them clothing to wear. Their death, a byproduct of the first sin and the entry of evil into the world. Here God tells him that atonement will come. By the death of their offering, their shame would be covered, even as they were sent out amidst the world. Abel understood this. Cain did not. Yet rather than trying to as well, though, Cain would let evil enter into his heart. He would let it overtake his soul, forcing love and light out of it amidst the darkness that now overtook him. It's here that Cain's sin was born. Not out of the deed that he was going to commit, but out of the thoughts that sprang to his mind as his parents before him. And there, he abandoned the Lord. He abandoned the Lord, and he sought out his own path.
God, he could see the darkness that had come to encompass the heart of Cain. It was not love that marked his spirit and his soul, but loathing and hatred. Resentment filled his being as he looked to his brother's sacrifice and saw that it had been accepted by the Lord, while his own had been rejected by his Creator. As is so often the case when people stumble and falter in their step, God sought out Cain to comfort and to console him, yet the evil that lurked in the man's heart had already overtaken him. Even as the Lord had finished consoling him, the plan would be hatched in his mind. He would be the most righteous. His sacrifices, they would be the ones that would be accepted, for there would be no others given. Even without acting against Abel, Cain would become a murderer in his heart, for whosoever hateth his brother is a murderer. Now all that was left for him was to act upon it, to act upon those urges that he felt. He would lure his brother away. He would lure him away to those fields that were just out of sight, that he might act upon his urges without interruption as his mind became made up. There he would take Abel's life, robbing him of his breath as he killed him where he stood. No longer would he have to compete with him for the favor of the Lord. No longer would he have to watch as Abel's sacrifices were looked upon with favor, while his own, they were not, for he was the only one who would be left. It was murder. Murder in the hope that it could win him the esteem of God. And for it to work, Cain would have to hide the body of Abel, for he knew he had done unrighteousness in the eyes of the Lord. He would have to make it appear as if his brother had fled, or his brother had run away, or that he had wandered off out of the sight and the presence of the Lord. He would try to conceal his brother's body, burying it out of view, believing that it could somehow be hidden from his Creator, believing that somehow his act could be hidden from his God. But But as Adam and Eve would discover in the Garden of Eden, there is no hidden place that lies out of the sight of the Lord. And no matter how hard he may have tried to hide what he had done, God would see and hear and know. As he looked upon the earth that he had created in the home of Adam and Eve, the homes of Cain and Abel, he would search for the younger child. And the Lord said unto Cain, Where is Abel thy brother? Cain's answer would be a telling one. I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? Not only had he failed to be his brother's keeper, to care for him in his hour of need, to edify him and to strengthen him. Not only had he failed to learn from Abel's walk of righteousness and to hold him with love in his heart, Cain robbed him of the precious gift of life that the Lord had granted unto him. He degraded and destroyed the image of God. However imperfect it had become through sin, iniquity, and transgression. He destroyed the image of God that Abel had been created in. The ground his brother was buried in, the blood of his that was spilt, it cried out to the Lord in anguish, cried out to the Lord in sorrow as it found itself murdered. There God would look in horror at what Cain had done, unable to believe it. He had forsaken all that the Lord had taught, and the knowledge that he had written in his heart. He had abandoned the path of righteousness. And that natural knowledge of God, which writes into the heart of the person the commands and the laws of the Lord, taking upon himself evil as he acted in the most brutal of ways. There was no love or mercy in Cain's soul, just the iniquity and the sin that tainted it amidst his own hatred. He had transgressed against the Lord his God, holding life to be cheap and without value. He had sinned and transgressed against his brother, taking from him the one thing he could never give back. If God had felt sorrow on the day he had to expel his new creation from the Garden of Eden and the paradise that he had wove together by his hand for them, then he surely felt sorrow on this day as he had seen what it was that Cain had done and the brutality that he had acted in, as he heard the tormented cries of Abel, the torturous longing of his spirit and his soul, as his blood was so needlessly spilt.